Hello, wildlings. I'm your Creepsmith, and you found my Fear Forge. Lucky you. Tonight's disgusting diatribe: rats. Bleh. Every old house is bound to have a few rats, right? I bought the old house the year that I graduated from college. It was startlingly cheap for such a big house. 2 stories, multiple bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and conveniences that seemed luxuries after my tiny college dorm. It was a very nice house despite being located in the middle of nowhere. Because I'd lived in a fairly large city for the majority of my life, the silence at the house was by far the worst thing about it. I was used to the hum of the city, the constant drone of cars outside my window. Here, the nights were torture. The silence was louder than anything that I'd ever heard before. In my first week at the house, I threw away my old wall clock because its ticking in the absence of any other noise was so loud it was apt to drive me crazy. This turned out to be a bad decision. The ticking was annoying, but it was at least a distraction from the other noises. I convinced myself every time the noises could be attributed to the rustle of wallpaper, a branch against a window, or the standard hums and bumps of an old house. I wouldn't admit, even to myself, that the noises did freak me out. See, at least at first, the rats were a convenient excuse. It was unreasonable to expect a vermin-free home in the middle of a forest, of course. But there were a lot of rats. I first noticed them when I opened a cupboard after my first trip to the store in the nearby town. I tried to put a loaf of bread in the cupboard, and I was greeted by 3 huge rats, staring blankly at me with beady eyes. After that, I found more of them around. Several in the basement, a few scuttling around the porch steps, the patter of their tiny paws in the attic, even a big gray one in my own bedroom. Naturally, I purchased a few rat traps, which seemed to help the problem quite a bit. A few days later, I got a cat, too. A small, scraggly creature I bought for $10 in a Walmart parking lot. Soon, my new cat became so efficient at catching these little buggers that I no longer felt the need to purchase rat traps every few trips to the store. Though I never really liked animals, I began to grow close to the little bugger. I even started calling him Tom, which I believe to be a suitable name for a cat. It would have been perfectly easy to feel content at that point. I was settling into my new home nicely. Tom was a good cat, and the vermin problem was under control. The only problem I had was that the noises hadn't stopped. They did quiet down for a while, just enough to explain them away. When I heard scratching, I would pat Tom between the ears, told him he must have missed a rat or 2. When I was sure something had scraped against the window, it was probably just a limb on the tree outside. Once I thought I heard something moving around in the basement. Asked myself what Tom could possibly have been doing down there. Never mind that I had just seen Tom walk into the kitchen. There was always an excuse. Usually, I just blamed it on the rats. After a few weeks, Tom wasn't bringing dead rats to the doorstep anymore. I always patted him on the head and told him he'd just had bad luck. I didn't let myself think that the cat had killed all the rats. Oh no, then it would have been harder to explain the noises. Looking back, I suppose what started it was Tom pawing at the door, wanting outside. See, it was late, and that cat had never wanted out at night before. I assumed that he'd seen a rat or a rabbit or some other small creature outside, so I let him out and then went back to bed. Not long after, I heard a relentless scratching outside my window. It was a harsh scraping noise, not unlike fingernails on a chalkboard. I turned over to get back to sleep, but the noise continued. So finally I got up and went to look outside to see what the problem was. Something had its face pressed up against the glass. It stayed there for just a second and then disappeared, but the fleeting image was enough. That sight will haunt my dreams for the rest of my life. Its face was long and as white as bone. It had no eyes, but a red light seemed to burn deep within the pits in its skull. Black veins ran over its head, crisscrossing and bulging. The rest of its body was covered in a thick black fur. That was all I could tell. Then it was gone. Once I had time to think on it, the creature was made even more horrifying by the fact that my room and, of course, my window were on the house's second floor. After it left, the sheer reek of it finally hit me. The whole night was filled with the smell of the thing, despite the fact that it never entered my home, well, to my knowledge. The smell was sour and rotting, and it made me want to vomit. I staggered back from the window, petrified both by the sight and the stench. I cupped my hands to my nose, my eyes watering and my legs shaking so hard I could barely stand. I spent the rest of that night locked in my bathroom, a knife clutched in my hand, doubting what I had seen. When morning came, the light gave me the courage to go outside. I remembered that I had let Tom out, and I went around the house calling for him. It didn't take long for me to find him. I won't go into detail, but Tom didn't even look like a cat anymore. I wanted to bury him, but the smell of the creature was all around him, and to be honest, I didn't think I could get very close. I was scared, and I was angry. This thing had killed my cat and taken away any hope of a quiet, safe life out here. Not knowing what else to do, I went to the police. I wasn't hopeful they'd do anything, but I knew I had to try. I was angry with their reactions, although I knew I would have reacted the same way. They didn't actually offer any help with the problem, and they only told me that if I didn't like it, I should sell the house and move. I drove home in a rage, intent on doing just that. I planned to put the house up for sale that very night and let some other guy deal with whatever that was. I never got to my house, though. The thing was in my driveway. In the light of day, I could see its clawed hands, huge, long paws with claws the size of my entire hand. It crouched on all fours, and though I was still a fair amount away from it, I could make out the expression on its face. I watched as it tilted its head to one side, and I could have sworn that it grinned at me. Naturally, I put my car in reverse with the intentions of never returning to that house again. As I drove away, I could hear it scream, loud, almost scarily inhuman. I got a new house, and I tried my hardest to forget. I didn't tell anyone. I mean, who'd believe me? All I said was that I found a good deal on a house in the city, not strictly untrue, and that the house in the woods was just too quiet and isolated for my liking. My new home is closer to the city. It's not as quiet here, but it's undeniably more peaceful. I won't deny that I still see that thing in my dreams, but I am happy here. I got a new cat, one that seems even more friendly than Tom was. I even found a job so that I can work nights, so that I never have to fear that thing staring at me in the darkness. And I also won't deny that sometimes I do hear noises. A scuffle in the basement, a rustle outside the window. Once or twice, even what seemed like scratching outside. But after all, every old home is bound to have a few rats, right? Rats. Why did it have to be rats? Yeah, stay scary and make the most of your nights.